Hello everyone and welcome back to the last day of the Superbet Blitz tournament currently being played in Poland. It is Magnus Carlsen versus Wesley and it was really hard to choose the game to show because Magnus completely obliterated the field on the last day. This is what happened. At some point he just woke up and he just started demolishing everyone. If not for Bogdan Daniel Deak, he would have adopted the field of World Elite class players, so that is absolutely incredible. If you guys have any other games that you enjoyed, do use hashtag suggestion and I will gladly go over them. But now let's check out this one. Magnus is facing Wesley who is an incredibly strong opponent in any time format, and you never know how the game will go. So let's check it out. And Magnus again does not bore us with his opening choices. He goes for pawn to b3, the Nimzovich-Larsen attack. He pretty much played everything this tournament. He played pawn to b4. I mean, excellent stuff. So here we have pawn to d5, the standard Nimzovich-Larsen attack, knight to f6, bishop to b2, and pawn to c5. Wesley treating this very in a classical manner, just controlling the center with pawns, as white decided not to do. We have pawn to e3, pawn to e6, and bishop to b5 check. We have knight b to d7, Magnus castles, and Wesley goes pawn to a6, chases away the bishop. Magnus goes bishop to e2, and now there is a game where bishop to d6 was played between Georg Mayer and Saleh Salem. It was played in Dubai 2 years ago. The game ended in a draw, but here we have bishop to e7, and it is now already as of move 7 that we have a completely new game. So okay, pawn to c4 makes sense. You want to have a strong central presence, and you want your bishop to be on this strong diagonal. We have castles, and now c captures on d5. We have knight captures on d5, and now knight to c3, offering a trade of knights. Wesley goes for it, captures, and now d captures. Now Magnus wants to move the queen, play c4, and put the rooks on the d file, so that definitely makes sense. b6, and now queen to c2. We have bishop to b7. Wesley's bishop also now incredible. Rook f to d1, and now queen to c7, getting away from that d file and preparing to bring the rooks into the game. We have bishop to d3. Magnus puts pressure on the h7 pawn, and Wesley defends it with pawn to g6. And now a very instructive maneuver by Magnus, as now by playing g6, Wesley really he really limits the power of the bishop on d3, whereas his own bishop on b7 is still very strong. So Magnus just trades it. A worse light square bishop for a better light square bishop. And okay, we have pawn to c4. Wesley even offers a pawn, but you don't really want to capture this. Magnus does trade bishops, captures, but he doesn't, of course, capture the pawn because then, let's say, the knight comes to c5, and the blockade here is just terrible for white. You have a bad bishop now, and you don't really gain anything. So rook to d4 now threatens rook captures on c4, and Wesley captures on b3, captures, and bishop to f6, and you really don't have any good squares for the rook along the d file. Like, you could try d6, but it seems a bit too adventurous for a blitz game, and you don't really have any use for the rook on h4, on f4 maybe, but again, nothing spectacular. So Magnus just goes back, rook to d2, and now he prepares to double up rooks on the d file. We have knight to c5, and pawn to c4. Now the pawns are nicely placed, and you offer a trade of bishops. Wesley trades this bishop as well, captures, and rook a to d8. And it seems like Wesley avoided all of the trouble. He managed to trade on pretty much everything, and now if he can trade the rooks off, should be a fairly clean draw. So rook captures on d8, we have rook captures on d8, and now you might expect something like b4, not just because you follow what happens on this channel, but also because it's a nice move. But Magnus goes pawn to h4. He just wants to go after that black king, and since you have a queen on this diagonal, you know that if this pawn reaches h6, the game is pretty much over. So queen to e7, we have pawn to h5, and now Wesley goes for something that no one wants to play, and that is g captures on h5. And it makes sense because, like I said, you don't want to see h6 on the board, even if it's okay. It's a blitz game. Imagine a5, h6, you have to defend checkmate. Now queen to f8, and maybe, okay, it's possible you are defending checkmate, maybe even you can dream of something like knight d7, knight somehow comes to f6, then to g4, then you actually win that pawn. It's possible, of course, but you don't have all the time in the world to calculate this. So Wesley just captures the pawn, and now queen to e5. Magnus centralizes the queen, offers the b3 pawn for the a6 pawn, and also puts pressure on the h5 pawn. And Wesley could just ignore this. He could just play a5 and keep the tension with knight captures on b3, but he goes for it right away. Knight captures on b3, Magnus captures on a6, queen to c5, now offering a queen trade, and now queen to g3, check by Magnus. King to f8, and now knight to g5. Knight to e5 is more precise, but again, blitz. So knight g5, and now Wesley has to play queen to f5, but he plays h6 because the pawn was hanging, and now Magnus gets a crushing attack. Knight h7 check, king to e7, rook to a7 check. We have rook to d7, and now queen to h4 with check. Interestingly, rook to a8 is very scary for black, as all of the squares have been taken by the rook and by the knight, and if this pawn is pushed, let's say, to e4 and d5, that black king is completely doomed there on e7. But okay, queen to h4 was played. We have king to d6, and now queen to f4 with check. Magnus continues the king hunt, queen to f6 check, king to d6, and now he trades. Rook captures, king captures, and just queen captures on f7 with check. Those are all isolated pawns, so Magnus, of course, knows that he's going to make quick work of them. So queen to e7, knight to f6 with check, king to d8, and now queen to g6, of course declining the queen trade. We have knight to a5 going after the pawn here, and Magnus just collects. Queen captures on h6, Wesley does the same, knight captures on c4, and knight captures on h5. Magnus is now up a pawn, but Wesley has a very dangerous passed b pawn. So, of course, he starts pushing it. Pawn to b5. We have knight to f4, king to d7, getting the king off of any nasty checks. We have queen to h5 going after the pawn here, and just king to c6, defending the pawn with the king. Queen to f3 with check, and king to b6. Now Wesley is hoping to get his king down the board and then even escort the pawn using the king amongst the queen and knight. So here we have queen to e4, putting pressure on the e6 pawn, and now Wesley can even play queen to f6 here, and it's going to be pretty good because it's very hard to avoid queen to a1 check. And that, for example, if capture with the knight, queen to a1 check, king h2, and queen to e5 forces a queen trade, and then at some point Magnus will have to give up the knight for this pawn. So it's hard to say, played to perfection, of course, should be a draw, but it's probably Wesley's best chance here. But he played king to a5, and now we have knight captures on e6, queen to b4, and now Wesley just runs into a forced checkmate in 7, but it's blitz. Magnus misses it, of course. He played queen to c2. The forced checkmate is queen to a8 check, and it's always terrible when you miss something that starts with check, because it's like everyone knows is the first okay, first you check if it's possible to capture something, then the next thing you check if it's possible to give a check, and then I don't know, and next you check if it's possible to attack something. That's kind of the order that your mind works in when you're playing a game. But here, it's just I imagine I would be very sad if I missed a variation that starts with check. Point is that after king to b6, it's a forced king hunt. Queen to b8 with check. Now you can't go back, otherwise you just get checkmated with queen to a6, queen to a7. So you have to go to the right side of the board. Queen to c7 check, king to d5. Now knight to f4 check, force the king further down the board. Queen e4, king to e4, queen to c6 with check, king to f5, and now queen to g6 check, forces the king into the central e5 square. The pawn covers d4 and f4, and this, of course, queen to e6 will be checkmate. So here we have queen to c2 by Magnus, missing this idea, but now queen to e1 with check, king to h2, and knight to d2. Now trying to get some sort of a checkmating attack against the white king. So king to g3 defends the f2 pawn, and knight to f1 check. We have king to f4. The queen guards the pawn here. We have knight to d2, again threatening the pawn, and Magnus again defends it with the king. King g3, knight to f1 with check, king to g4, and now knight to d2, and now queen to c3 with check. Magnus has to be careful not to repeat moves, and Wesley plays it. Pawn to b4. Is this one of the b4 moves in the long line of the winning b4 moves? Well, let's see what happens. Queen to c5 with check, king to a4, and now knight to d4. Magnus offers the f2 pawn as the knight is covering b3 and b5, so you know that queen to a7 will be checkmate. So Wesley cannot afford this. He plays pawn to b3, and now look at this. Queen to b5 with check, king to a3, and now there is only one winning move for Magnus. Feel free to pause the video and win this incredible brawl while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on always looking for fun ways to give up your queen, at least temporarily. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is queen captures on b3. This is what Magnus played, and now there is nothing more to be done here. Wesley captured, Magnus played knight to c2 with check, and he was in this position on move 56 that Wesley so resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The problem is, once the king moves, you're going to capture the queen, and now you have 3 pawns to 0. Of course, this is completely winning. So Wesley unfortunately had to resign here, and another victory for Magnus Carlsen, who just I mean, after two suspicious days of quality chess, of suspicious quality chess during the rapids, he just woke up during in the final day of the rapids, and also now during the 2 days of Blitz, absolutely crushing the field. If you guys haven't seen it, do check it out once again. And here you can see that even though with this spectacular achievement, he still only wins it 1 point ahead of Young Krzysztof Duda. And interestingly, they went into the last game of the Blitz. They faced each other, and had Duda won, it would be equal. It would be 20. Duda would be the one who would win the tournament, but in the end, the game ended in a draw, and there was nothing more to be done there. But yeah, it was a grueling battle. I think it lasted for let me just check 24 moves. Magnus got a winning advantage very early on, maybe like at move 11 or something like that, and then they went into a very, very long end game. Then Duda was completely winning. He had a bishop and 2 pawns against a rook, and okay, Magnus just defended well, and in the end, Duda squandered the winning advantage. But it was really wild, so if you do have a chance, do check out those 124 moves. If you guys really want, I can also show that game, but only if you really want. That's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Nice to see that Magnus, even though he's been away from chess for a while, playing poker, doing some other stuff, he still has it, and he's able to completely dominate the field and even almost adopt the world elite. That's the game, and this short coverage of the Superbet Rapid and Blitz tournament that was played in Poland. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank John Shirtliff, GolfSoftware.com, Ravishing Reptiles YouTube, Goran Vodopia, and Uroš Petrovic for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.